If you were to trace a line with your finger south from the coast of Spain, you would travel a great distance across the open Atlantic. Far to the south, much closer to the shores of Morocco and Western Sahara, you would find a group of islands full of life and shaped by old volcanoes. These are the Canary Islands. Looking at them on a map, their location brings up a simple but big question. How did these islands, so close to Africa, become a lasting part of Spain? The answer isn't in just one event, but in a long and complicated story. Old people's brave explorers, smart plans, and the slow, steady flow of history. The story starts with the island's natural place and shape, far isolated and later very wanted. For thousands of years they were their own world, known to old sailors as the Fortunate Isles. Then the age of sail and exploration turned them into vital stopping places. Their future became tied to the plans of a growing European power. Spain's claim was forged by fighting sealed by royal orders and sustained by the needs of a global empire. To understand why the islands are still Spanish in 2025, we look back over 600 years. Long before the first European ships cast their shadows upon the shores of the Canary Islands, they were already home to a remarkable people. We know them today as the Guanches, a name from Tenerife now used for all the island's first peoples. Their beginnings trace to Berber North Africa, arriving many hundreds, maybe thousands, of years before the Spanish. Living alone, they built a unique culture, deeply tied to the volcanic land. They were people of the land and the sea. They lived in natural caves or simple stone houses, guided by seasons and the stars. The Guanches were not united as one. Each main island had its own kingdoms. They were skilled farmers, growing barley and wheat. They were expert herders, raising goats and sheep, which gave them milk, cheese, and meat. Society had clear ranks and nobles. They practiced a complex religion, worshipping gods and sacred nature, especially Mount Tide on Tenerife, thought to be a way to the underworld. They practiced serious mummification, similar to ancient Egyptian methods, indicating North African roots and respect for the afterlife. Their technology remained Stone Age. No metalworking, no advanced sailing. They used obsidian and other hard stones for tools, and fire-hardened wood for weapons. That gap in technology became deadly when European soldiers in armor with steel swords and crossbows arrived. Still, for centuries, their way of life endured. They developed Silbo Gomero, the whistled language of La Gomera, a voice that crossed valleys, and it still survives today. The Guanches' story is central to Canarian identity, their spirit, their bond with the islands. The Canary Islands were not completely unknown to the ancient world. Roman writers wrote about the Fortunate Isles, Pliny the Elder. Stories came from sailors who had gone past the Pillars of Hercules. For hundreds of years, these islands stayed on the edge of the known world, a place of myths visited now and then. Genoese sailors, Catalan sailors, Portuguese sailors, looking for trade, searching for slaves, chasing the legendary River of Gold. These early meetings were often short and violent, but they put the islands back on European maps. It wasn't until the start of the 15th century that a more serious, organized effort began, not led by a great king, but by an ambitious nobleman from Normandy. His name was Jean de Béthencourt. In 1402, with promised help from King Henry III of Castile, he set sail not just for fame, but for money. He wanted orchil, a plant for valuable purple dye, and to set up a base to attack the African coast. Béthencourt and his partner Gadifer de la Salle first landed. Lanzarote, Fuerteventura, El Hierro. There, facing little resistance, they set up small military posts and began settling. Béthencourt declared loyalty to the Castilian crown, linking the island's future to Spain, but the takeover was far from over. The larger, mountainous, populated western islands were harder. Gran Canaria, La Palma, Tenerife. For decades, the campaign was brutal and piecemeal. Small group fighting, changing alliances, Intense conflict followed by uneasy peace. Private adventurers gave way to government-backed campaigns. The island's strategic importance was clear to Castile's rulers. This marked a turning point. Europeans brought soldiers, settlers, and something far more deadly, disease. The isolated Guanche people had no protection against illnesses like smallpox, influenza. These diseases swept through communities with terrible effects, making them weaker against the invaders. Christianity began to be introduced. Priests tried to convert the native people, sometimes by persuasion, other times as a pretext for takeover. A complex mix of wanting more, smart planning, religious passion, setting the stage for the final decisive push by the Spanish crown. As the 15th century went on, Jean de Betancourt's private conquest became a royal project. The Catholic monarchs were unifying Spain, Isabella of Castile, Ferdinand of Aragon, and funding voyages that reshaped the map. They saw the Canaries as more than products. In the 1470s, the crown took direct control. Gran Canaria, La Palma, Tenerife. Royal backing turned scattered raids into a planned military campaign, paid and directed by Castile. The final phase was long and bloody. Gran Canaria fought from 1478 to 1483. The Guanches, led by figures like Duramas, used rough terrain to resist against Spanish forces with superior weapons. Castile's war machine, led by Juan Rejon and Pedro de Vera, wore them down. La Palma fell in 1493 after Tanausu was captured by trickery. Tenerife, the largest, most populated island, had the fiercest resistance and fighting spirit. There, Bencomo of Taoro and the Mencies scored a stunning victory at the First Battle of Acentejo in 1494, La Matanza. That victory was short-lived. Alonso Fernández de Lugo returned a year later with a bigger, better-equipped army. Reinforcements and a new sickness that weakened the Guanches allowed him to crush resistance. By 1496, with the last Mencies surrender, the military conquest was complete, nearly 100 years after Betancourt. Then legal and political integration began. The 1479 Treaty of Alcáçovas confirmed Castile's claim, sidelining Portugal. The crown installed its government. The islands became part of the Kingdom of Castile. Once the conquest was complete, the true value of the Canary Islands to the Spanish crown became very clear. Their importance was not just in the land itself, but in their location. The islands sit right in the path of the northeasterly trade winds. These winds made the trip from Europe to the Americas faster and more reliable. The Canaries quickly became the necessary last stop for Spanish ships heading west. La Gomera, 1492. Columbus made his final preparations there before crossing the Atlantic. That pattern repeated for the next 300 years. This strategic stopping point changed the islands. Las Palmas, Santa Cruz, ships filled with explorers, soldiers, missionaries, settlers. They stopped to take on fresh water, wine, fruit, salted meat. The Canaries were the last piece of the old world they'd see, and the first sign of home on return. A vital place for supplies, a sea service station linking Spain and its American empire. Losing the Canaries would have risked the whole colonial project. The crown wouldn't allow that risk. The islands also became money-making. The Spanish introduced new farming, sugar cane. Canarian sugar became one of Europe's most valuable goods. It poured wealth to landowners and traders. The islands became an early model for plantation economies. When sugar declined due to American competition, wine took over. Malvasia, canary sack, praised even in Shakespeare. Finally, a crucial military role, a forward base for the Spanish Navy, protection against pirates, defense versus England and the Netherlands. Forts were built to protect harbors. Admiral Nelson would later try, and fail, to capture them. Important location, economic value, military importance, too vital to let go. The centuries after the conquest were a time of big change. The Canary Islands were not left as a still military outpost but grew into a complex, living society. Settlers arrived from all parts of Spain, Andalusia, Castile, Galicia, and from Portugal and Italy. They brought language, their Catholic faith, their customs. Those elements mixed with Guanche culture and African slave trade influences. That mixing created a new Canarian identity distinct from mainland Spain, yet connected to it. Spanish became the main language, the church the central place in towns. Political and administrative ties to Spain deepened over time. They were ruled from Madrid, while local landowning families managed daily business and the island's economy. The legal system was Castilian. The islands were represented, though from a distance, within the Spanish political system. By the 18th and 19th centuries, the idea of the islands not being Spanish became unthinkable in Madrid and for many islanders themselves. Their fortunes, their safety, their cultural world were tied to Spain. As the Americas sought independence, the Canaries stayed within Spain. Closeness to Europe, long integration, and lack of a large, distinct local-born population pushing for separation meant no big independence movement. Political struggles were often internal, rivalry between Tenerife and Gran Canaria for power. They focused on status within Spain, seeking greater rights and recognition as Spanish citizens, not as a separate country. The blending process ended in the 20th century. After Franco and Spain's shift to democracy, the Canaries gained self-government in 1982. They gained a parliament, their own president, and powers over healthcare, education, and protecting the environment. This recognizes the Canaries' unique identity while fixing their place in the Spanish state. Today, as we look at the Canary Islands in the year 2025, Spain's historical claim is a clear fact, woven into the very fabric of modern European life. The island's main role has changed from a strategic military and trade outpost to a global tourism powerhouse. Each year, millions of visitors arrive. Sunny beaches, amazing volcanic parks, lively towns. This tourism-driven economy has brought great wealth and further connected the islands into the European network. The euros spent in a restaurant in Tenerife or a shop in Lanzarote directly link the island's well-being to the economic health of Germany, the United Kingdom, and of course, mainland Spain. The island's strategic importance has not disappeared. It has simply changed. They continue to host important Spanish military bases, providing a crucial watch point over the Atlantic and the nearby coast of West Africa. Furthermore, as a full part of Spain, the Canary Islands are also part of the European Union, making them the EU's southernmost territory. This special status gives them access to European markets and development money, while allowing for certain exceptions because of how far away they are, a designation known as an outermost region. This political and economic reality ties the islands firmly to Europe, making their historical connection to Spain more important than ever in a world that is connected globally. The question of identity remains complex and beautiful. The people of the islands today are Canarians. They are Spanish, and they are European. They speak Spanish with their own special accent and way of talking, celebrate their unique local traditions, and take great pride in the history of the Guanches and the natural wonders of their homeland. At the same time, they vote in Spanish national elections, follow Spanish national news, and share in the broader cultural life of the mainland. The small independence movements that exist have very little popular support, as most islanders see their future made safe by local self-rule and their connection to the larger Spanish and European communities. It began with the ambition of explorers and the smart vision of a growing empire. It was made firm by the creation of a new society, the flow of trade, and the slow but steady process of political and cultural integration. The original conquest was a brutal and sad event for the island's first inhabitants. But the historical forces it started created an unbreakable bond, one that has been made stronger by centuries of shared history, and is now shown in the modern reality of a self-governing, successful, and uniquely Canarian region within the Kingdom of Spain. The map simply tells us where the islands are. Their story tells us who they have become. And that is why Spain owns, and the Canarians inhabit, a place forged by nature, transformed by history, and lived today by its people. Soft. The answer lies in 6 centuries of strategy, settlement, law, and identity.